Sentinel-2B, 3A, 3B, 5P, Alias, and Metop-C are all satellites successfully launched by ESA's Earth observation program over the last 3 years. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Living Planet Symposium 2019. In the last 3 years, we have been in many different places, but this event took place in Prague at that time, and we've seen huge developments in Earth observations since then, despite the fact that the number of flat earthers have increased, that is. We now have 15 Earth observation ESA-developed satellites in operation and 25 under development. We're now able to get images of the round planet, Earth, every 15 minutes from our Meteosat geostationary satellites. We're now able to assist and support startups with their application ideas that use our data through European programs like Horizon 2020. We're now able to provide broadcasters like the BBC and Netflix with images of our planet for their latest programs on Earth observation. And we are even able to witness young environmental activists like Sweden's Greta Thunberg or Germany's Jakob Blasel stand up for the future of the planet and voice what we have discovered about our ever-changing climate. My name is Louise Houghton, and over the course of the morning, I'm very pleased to welcome some prolific guests to our stage who are going to be diving into these subjects in a little more detail and sharing with you their passion on this planet and their work. We're very happy to be here in Milan for this prestigious event and joined from people from over 80 different countries. In total, 4,000 people registered for this week, and these include scientists, users, industry, institutional members, and many of our member state space agencies. Many of you are in this room today, but there's also a number of people joining us via our live stream. So hello to you wherever you're watching in the world. Thank you for being with us this morning. Those of you here will, I'm sure, get a chance to meet many of your peers over the coming week and talk about our achievements to date, the trends that are going on currently, and the forecasts for the future. To get the ball rolling this year, I'd like to welcome to the stage our host here in Italy, the Councillor for Urban Planning, Parks and Agriculture at the Town Hall in Milan. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Pier Francesco Maran. Please.
Good morning. I want to give you a warm welcome from our city, from our mayor, Beppe Sala. Those are strange days for Milan because till yesterday the city was full of Alpines. We have 500,000 of former Italian army soldiers that were visiting our city, and today we have such an important scientific event. That is part of a city like Milan, and all the main cities in the world are facing the theme of climate change and their contribution to planet. Milan is part of C40 network, a network of big cities involving on this theme, on the fact that cities are both the problem of climate change, of environment, of pollution, but could be also part of the solution. To well understand what we can do, we need to study, and what you do those days in Milan is so important on this theme. We well know that studying the Earth from the sky, it's possible to understand many things of our planet. Many of the solutions and improvement we had in the last years were based on what you study from your point of view. And I think that we know that we still need many effort on this topic. Actually, in Milan, in Italy, as all over the world, the first problem is to let everybody understand that is such a big problem, the climate change. Actually, there are still people, still newspapers, still some experts that say that climate change is not a problem, and we know that is a problem. But we have we need instruments, we need to talk, we need to explain people that we have to do something, that something is happening on our planet. So, such an important event is also a way to talk to everybody that we need to speak about this problem and that we need to contribute with the new solutions. Luckily, we saw that young people are understanding that we have to do something. Even this morning we will talk about it. It's important to find an alliance between science, institution, young people to show that we can do something and we have to do it now. So, just a few words more to say that we hope you will spend a good time in our city, that this event will be useful for the study of our planet and to find a good solution, because everybody needs it, and we need that science help institution to find the good solution. Thank you and good work.
Well, I think I speak for everybody when I say that we are very pleased to be joined together here, and we're very excited for the future as well. Let's talk a little bit more about the future then with our Director General at ESA this morning. Johann Dietrich Werner has been in this position for nearly 4 years. He's overseen all of the satellite launches that I mentioned at the top of the event, and many more for space exploration, science and research missions too. Today he's going to address the concept of Space 4.0 and talk a little more about the ministerial meeting coming up in November later this year. This is going to be held in Seville and will be when important decisions are made and milestones are set for our Earth observation programs. Ladies and gentlemen, he's ready and waiting. Please put your hands together for Johann Dietrich Werner.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and on behalf of ESA, I'm very happy that I can welcome you for the Living Planet 2019. And I would like to go a little bit into what are we doing and why are we doing it. First of all, space is nice. If you are just working for space, you are already happy. But this is not what we intend to do. We intend to do all of what we are doing in space to tackle global challenges. And here you see a full list of global challenges. And you might have your special priority, your personal priority. But of course, all of these are important. Climate change at the very beginning, but then you see also migration, mobility, communication, energy, shortage of resources, demographic development, conflicts and catastrophes, man-made and natural ones, health, and then also curiosity. Curiosity is a very strong driver for humankind, and this is covering many different areas, and therefore what we are doing with space, and this was what I mentioned already 3 years ago in the ministerial conference, Space 4.0 covers 4 I's, meaning information, innovation, interaction, and coming back to curiosity, also inspiration. Now, what is ESA doing? ESA has a full-fledged program, and all of these programs are now going also to the Ministerial Council at the end of this year, which we call Space 19 Plus, Space for Space, 19 for 2019, and Plus for the future. And you see here from the left to the right our 4 narrative pillars, which are space, science and exploration, safety and security, and then applications. And the application pillar is the one which we are addressing mainly today, Earth observation, but also navigation, telecommunication, and on the very right-hand side, you see that we have technologies, but also, of course, the launchers, the space transportation, and operations. Exploration. Why do I talking about exploration? I would like to make clear that all of these 4 pillars we have in ESA, that they are linked together very directly. For instance, exploration and climate change. The greenhouse effect was not discovered on Earth. The greenhouse effect was discovered on planet Venus. And then one looked to the Earth and I found we have a similar thing, not as extreme as on Venus, but extreme enough to tackle it and to try to counteract. The other thing is space safety. And space safety and Earth observation have also some very strong link, because this is Sentinel-1A, one out of the Copernicus fleet of Sentinel satellites. Directly after the launch, a selfie, so to say, and you see everything is in very good situation, everything is fine. But then 2 years later, suddenly we found that there was a small impact of a very tiny particle, space debris, which destroyed part of the solar panel. Don't worry, the satellite is still in good health. Redundancy is something we are always building in our satellites, and therefore this satellite is still working. And therefore what we did in the last couple of months, we set up a downstream gateway covering all these 4 areas, the 4 narratives of ESA, in order to come to better solutions for citizens, for politicians, for each and everyone, to use space really for daily life. And one subject we decided in this downstream gateway is smart city, because in smart city you can really combine all of these aspects, be it climate change, be it also the things of navigation, of telecommunication. Each and everything comes together in smart cities, and therefore we put this as a topic in order to show that all of these topics are coming together. And as I said, we called it Space 4.0 some 3 years ago. We started at that time with Space 4.0 discussion because we saw a shift of paradigm in space. We have a change of motivations compared to 50 years ago. We are celebrating this year 50 years of first man on the moon, but we are in a totally different environment today. There are more actors worldwide, more than 70 spacefaring nations. Industry and also academia have their own space missions. So we have new technologies, and that means also that for the space agencies, we are changing our roles. The space environment is changing, but also the global setup has changed, and the European Union is now very active in space as well. And still we have national activities also in Europe, which is good because they are complementary to what we are doing. And on the right-hand side, you see a lot of lists what is happening. Some people call it just new space. I think new space is part of this shift of paradigm. Internet of Things, I don't go through the whole list, but I think it's important to mention participation at least. So we are looking more to citizens to ask them what should we do. And on the very level down, you see digitalization and artificial intelligence. And that means also that we are changing our way how to procure satellites, how to procure missions. We still have the traditional, the classic way, which is still very excellent. It works perfectly. We showed it last year with Aeolus, a mission which is measuring the wind speed. But we have now new methods, public-private partnerships, as we did in communication first, but now we have it in each and every program of ESA. We are doing also service requests. That means we are asking industry directly to provide us a service and not looking into the details of the color of the screws, etc. And with the Moon Village, we have a special activity where we are just looking into a role of a broker, putting together the players of different fields in order to do something on a global scale. Now, Europe from space is borderless. And this is a very nice message. Also, the astronauts give us that message, but of course also the Earth observation satellites. You don't see any border. That's a very nice view of Europe. And therefore we are saying united space in Europe or united Europe in space. Both works at the same time. And this means also for us that Europe is working together intensively. There's of course a special thing we have with EUMETSAT, we have a strong relation, but of course there is a special relation because we have now also in the European Union a European Space Program, and this has to be really in a coherent approach with ESA because the taxpayers are the same, and the taxpayers really can ask us, can expect from us that we are working together intensively. And therefore we decided some 3 years ago common goals, full integration of space into European economy and society. This is what we are intended to do. A globally competitive European space sector, which means not an artistic behavior, but just if you are competitive, you can be a good partner worldwide, and that means also European autonomy in accessing and using space. Again, this activity leads us to better partnership worldwide. When you see over here, we are saying taking the pulse of our planet. This is what we are trying to do with Earth observation. Personally, I'm sometimes using, instead of the word taking, the word feeling. Why do I do so? Taking is more the measurement, the facts, how you can do it on a technical basis. Feeling is exactly what it is. Feeling, that means we feel also the pulse of our planet. These two sides of measuring and then getting it to emotions, that's for me very important. And we do this, of course, with the European Union, with the Sentinels, with EUMETSAT, with the METSATs, and ESA with its own Earth Explorer missions. And that means all of this comes together, and by that, and again, this is a coherent European approach, we can deliver better results for our society. Let's assume that there are two planets in space and they are meeting. One is a very shiny blue one and the other one very ugly. And the blue one is asking the other one, you look very sick. And the other one is saying, yes, I got Homo sapiens. And then the blue dot is saying, no problem, it doesn't last long. I think this is something we have to avoid. And for that, we have to go into the future. We have to look what to do in the future. And for me, the future of Earth observation satellites have a lot of things we have to do. During the production already, using green material, then a plug-and-play technology. Inexpensive, this is what we have to develop. They should be light, because whenever it's light, it's easier and cheaper to move it into space. So we need green transportation systems. We should also have satellites which are flexible to adapt to new requests. They should be robust, because in space it's not an easy environment, and we need also secure data transmission. And then artificial intelligence. This is also a great deal for satellites, because, for instance, for the image selection we can use it, but also for automated collision avoidance. We should not have the additional space debris by colliding satellites, and automated deorbiting at the end of lifetime in order to avoid any future space debris. And that means that if you look to the value of Earth observation, we can clearly state it is expanding the frontiers of knowledge. Through Earth observation, we understand the climate change. Through Earth observation, we can also understand weather forecast and do it even better. We can also inform the general public to raise awareness, also the politicians. And it is an infrastructure for our daily use, that's clear. So it is assisting decision makers and policy makers in different areas. And through the Earth observation, we are also developing a European industry and enabling entrepreneurship and growth. And therefore, we monitor earthly crises, whether it's natural or human-made. Therefore, it is fascinating inspiration and motivation for the future, which I think is very important. And for all those who need this tiny number crunching, we can say that €1 invested in Earth observation leads back at least between 4 to 10 euros in economic growth, and you will hear more about that. As I mentioned earlier, we will have Space 19 Plus at the end of this year, and there Earth observation plays a major role with many different elements. I'm looking forward to have a successful Space 19 Plus, and I'm also looking forward to have this successful conference this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our DG, Johan Dietrich Werner. There are 22 member states within the European Space Agency. Each of them play their own part and contribute in varying different ways. Italy is, of course, one of them, and it's also home to ESRIN, ESA's main base for Earth observation programs. This establishment was opened in Frascati, near Rome, in 1968, and last year celebrated its 50th anniversary. We're now going to hear about Italy's involvement with our European Earth observation programs. To address this, I'd like to welcome the new president of the Italian Space Agency, ASI, Giorgio Sacoccia.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, I'm very new. It's about a week that I've been appointed, and what's best occasion to to start to be here and address all of you in this fantastic event that ESA has organized in a perfect way, and the Italian Space Agency has supported with a strong effort. So many things have changed, are changing in the era of Earth observations in Europe and everywhere. We have the evolution of the Copernicus program is quite important. We are preparing, is putting a strong effort in preparing the next space segment part of the Copernicus program. We are all involved in defining the best way to make use of the huge amount of data that Earth observation projects and programs provide to citizens, and to try to use them at best. We need to introduce new methodologies to process all this incredible amount of data. So we talk about introducing the use of artificial intelligence. We are going to the Earth observation is the area where certainly we are developing what we used to call now data-based economy. So really, so much going on at global level, at European level, but also at national level. There is a lot that the single nations can do to contribute, not just through the joint programs, but also individually, and then offering the results of these national efforts to the global endeavor. And that's what Italy is doing already since many years, and is willing to continue to do. You see on the screen something which for us is really a reason to be proud of. On the 22nd of March, we launched our PRISMA satellite, and the pictures you see here are the very first one that we are disclosing of what this satellite can do now. It's a very new concept of satellite, because PRISMA makes use of hyperspectral technologies to do Earth observation. Is really high-level content of new technologies, because hyperspectral technology used on PRISMA works on different areas. We have cameras that do observation on the visible band, on near infrared, and on short-wave infrared. So what you see here in those pictures is actually a combination of the three different ways of observing on the same beautiful spots on Earth. In combination of those three type of observation, plus a panchromatic camera, the intention is to combine those information, those data, to provide a good support, in particular in areas that necessitate use of data for vegetation, agriculture, management of water, and also management of important risks like fires, volcanic eruptions, etc. PRISMA is a precursor. We intend to use it as a technology and data provision demonstrators, and we paved the way for the development also of the Sentinel, hyperspectral Sentinel, that will come shortly. So PRISMA is a result of a very good effort of innovation from Italian industry, and of course the management of the Italian Space Agency. Is a typical example of the way indeed nations can contribute to the more global endeavor. Things that we are already used to do with other programs, like the very important Cosmos SkyMed constellation. We have our 4 satellites of Cosmos SkyMed operating on with synthetic aperture radars on the X-band that are an important element of the Copernicus program, and provide great support, in particular to the management of crisis for very urgent needs, and contribute to the management of situation of environmental, humanitarian, and civil protection situation of crisis. So we are very, very proud of what we can do with the Cosmos SkyMed constellation, and we are preparing the next generation of these of the satellites that contribute to the constellations, where we plan now to do also some, it's not just completing the constellation, but also to do some extra step in the evolution of it, adding element like polarimetry, and we will go under the 1 meter of resolution. So Cosmos SkyMed is for us not only, I mean, an important technological and programmatic contribution, but it's also a way to open to international collaborations, of course, a part of what we do within the European frame. We also use Cosmos SkyMed as an instrument for collaboration with NASA, with Argentina, with the Japanese, specific bilateral collaboration in Europe, like what we do with the United Kingdom. So this is Cosmos SkyMed is one of the main examples of the typical way Earth observation work. Is working together, is synergy, is try to put together all the possible way to collect data and to use them at best to help us understanding and protecting better our environment. In this respect, talking about data, I should mention that, of course, Italy, apart of having a very good capacity to develop instruments, satellite that contribute to Earth observation, we have, and we're developing more and more an excellent capacity, industrial capacity to process the data and to develop services that will use the data of Earth observation. And so on one side, this is an important element of a future economy aspects, but at the same time is for us, for the community that will develop new systems, new technologies, a way to learn on what the service providers, the users, will need. And this is a typical, in my opinion, occasion. This conference is a typical occasion where the two parts, the two sides of the experts will confront themselves to try to work in an effective way on which are the next steps for Earth observation. Italy, I mentioned it already, is a major player of European initiatives in the frame of ESA, EUMETSAT, and European Union. We have been a major player so far. We intend to remain and to develop even further what we are doing in the future in such a way that we can contribute to the maximization of the return for the society, thanks to the Earth Observations Initiative. We are particularly proud about the fact that we have in Italy the ESRIN, the center of ESA dedicated in particular to Earth observation. My friend Joseph will talk immediately after me. We have an excellent collaboration between the Italian Space Agency and ESRIN. We're actually not far, not more than 10 minutes at distance, and we really work together closely to try to develop at best joint initiatives. Well, this symposium is one example of that. And Earth observation is really working together, is synergy, is aggregation. I would like to maybe conclude my presentation quoting 2 days ago I had the chance to be at the press conference of the next Italian and European astronaut, Luca Parmitano, who will also be the commander of the space station. He closed his speech with a message which for me was really important. I mean, he's the father of 2 daughters, so do I. Of course, these are much younger than mine. And he said that the real enemy, if we have to identify a real enemy, this is, I mean, the situation of the environment, I mean, global pollution, global warming. So what we are preparing today to deliver to our kids one day. So if we want to do something to deliver a better world to our kids, we need Earth observation. We need the results of events like the one that we're starting today. And I hope you will all think carefully that what you do today, the results of these exchanges, have an important target, which is a better world for our kids tomorrow. So I wish you all the best exchange and work for the coming days, and thanks for listening to me.
Thank you to Giorgio Sacoccia. Now, what we aim to do here at the Living Planet Symposium is, of course, recognize all of our achievements, but also look to the future. The next 20 years are going to be very significant in terms of technological advances, and ESA plans to be at the forefront of those changes. Recently, data and images were provided to the BBC for a new David Attenborough documentary and a 4-part docu-series called Earth from Space. These are both fantastic examples of how organizations are getting on board to help the public care that little bit more about our planet. Josef Aschbacher is the Director of Earth Observation Programs at ESA, and he is now going to share with us his insights into 2040. Amongst other things, Josef will talk about Earth observation and the Europe 2040 strategies. These will address the challenges that mankind are thought to face over the coming years, and Josef will also shed light on what ESA is doing to ensure many burning questions are being answered and realized. Everybody, please put your hands together for the Director of the Earth Observation Programs at ESA, Josef Aschbacher.
Thank you, Luise. Thank you very much for this short introduction. I would like to show you in the next couple of minutes what EO Europe 2040 is, what it means, and where Earth observation goes in the next 2 decades. We have just heard before from Giorgio Sacoccia and also from Jan Werner what the future challenges are. Let me go a bit into detail and tell you what we think EO Europe 2040 means for us. First, and you have seen this before from Jan, my Director General, we are taking the pulse of our planet. That means Earth observation, our satellites are measuring different aspects of our planet, the atmosphere, the oceans, the land surface, and its combination and interaction, and really making sure that we feel what is happening, how our planet is changing, but in particular, what will come up in 2040 or towards 2040 when our children, the ones quoted before, are adults and really need to see what the living space of them is. So how do we do this? What is the road 2040? And there are many aspects that are, and many challenges that we see on this road. First, and this has been mentioned many times, climate change is a key challenge, and I'm very glad to see Jakob Blasel here in our round of speakers in the morning, because he represents the youth, the young people, the generation which in 2040 are adults and are really worried of what happens to our planet. 2040 will also see an increase of our temperature. The COP21 Paris conference came to the Paris Agreement, which suggests that 2 degrees Celsius is the maximum temperature increase we should have in order to have a sustainable planet and not do havoc to our planet and therefore have a sick planet as we have seen it before. But also, not only climate is changing, also the technology around us is changing, and Earth observation has huge challenges which we are facing and we are working with in a very proactive way. One of them is that we are disseminating huge amounts of data. For example, in Copernicus, which is the largest data distributor in the world today, 250 terabytes per day are disseminated from the central data hub, which is operated by ESA on behalf of the European Commission to the world, and these data are free and open. That means everyone can get access to this data for free. But also, there are new companies and new players coming up in space. We have seen before also in the speech of my DG that commercialization is a key aspect, and we see this extremely fast developing in Earth observation. You see here some of the logos of companies which are entering the space domain, and some of them have nothing to do with space. They just enter there because there's prospect, there's future, and there are opportunities which are coming up. And you see some of them in Europe, some of them overseas, but big players in the ICT domain are entering Earth observation because it is a very fast evolving sector and there are really opportunities to offer. But also, and this is always at the core of our activities, we are doing Earth observation for people and for our planet, because this is most important for each and every one of us, and we have to provide good information for good decision making. There should be voice.
I come from Sweden, and I want you to panic. I want you to act as if the house was on fire.
This is Greta Thunberg. Many of you have seen her in TV. Very impressive young lady, 16 years old, good friend of Jakob, and she is saying the house is on fire. That means our planet needs attention. And really, this is one image of Greenland. There are fires in Greenland, which is quite unusual because Greenland normally is known for its ice cover and also the melting ice. But in this case, we see a Sentinel-2 image of August 2017, when you see actually here some fires over peatland, which has been observed for a couple of weeks. And this is quite unusual, and we believe that the melting of the permafrost has led to the possibility of the peat catching fire, and this fire was burning for a number of days, actually weeks, in this area of Western Greenland. Just to mention here also the capabilities of Sentinel-2. You see the image is changing between the white cloud and the cloud in blue color. This is the same image taken at the same moment with the same satellite, but the one with the white cloud is the visible channels which are shown, and the other one is showing channels in the near infrared, which allows to partially see through the cloud to see the burning areas which you see here, which really shows the capacity of Sentinel-2 with its 13 spectral channels. This example here is another result of taking the pulse of our planet and how it will change, and is changing already. You see here glacial ice loss in the world. A group of scientists led by Swiss researchers has compiled data on ground and from space and checked what the glaciers have, or how the glaciers changed over the last 50 years in all parts of the world. You see that in total 9,600 gigatons of ice was melting, which is a lot. And all the glaciers, with one small exception in Southwest Asia, all the glaciers have been melting and have been losing ice masses, which are shown here in the size of the bubbles. The bigger the bubble, the more ice was lost. And again, obviously, this leads to increased water levels. On average, we expect that the mean sea level by 2100 is 1.5 meters higher. 1.5 meters is a lot, because that really means that some of the houses on the coasts will be underwater, and this will change drastically the urbanization along coastal areas. Another example of what the satellites are measuring, taking the pulse of our planet, is measuring air pollution, in this case with Sentinel-5P, a satellite we have launched for the European Commission in 2017. What you see here are measurements averaged between April 2018 and March 2019, so almost 1 year's time, and taken really the average value. So this is not a snapshot, but this is the average of 1 year of NO2 concentrations over Europe. NO2, as you know, is a gas that is emitted by traffic and by industry, so basically pollution due to human beings. And I don't need to explain the various colors. Red obviously means this is a very high concentration of NO2 and very high air pollution. And you see immediately the big city centers and the centers of industrial activity, which are shown here. We are getting these measurements every day, and this is quite some important data which we have in order to really monitor what is happening on different days in different parts of the world. Another example where satellite data are used very successfully is agriculture. Agriculture, in this case, there are some agricultural fields showing around Prague in the Czech Republic. You can measure this, and this is one of the oldest disciplines where Earth observation has really been used operationally. Also, the Joint Research Center, which is very close by, has been really leading the research and the use of this data for agriculture. So it can be used locally. It can be used at country level. In this case, you see Germany, or globally. In this case, you see Africa as one important part of the globe where agriculture and food security obviously is a key issue. I don't need to mention that agriculture and food security are key factors for sustainability, but also other issues like migration are impacted and influenced by availability of food, and this is a parameter which we measure on a regular basis. And this we do with more and more satellites to come. What you see here is a curve that shows the Earth observation satellite launches of the larger satellites, so not the very small ones, the ones that are larger than 50 kilograms and excluding meteorological satellites. And you see a very steep increase of the number of satellites and therefore data which is available in the coming years. For example, in the next couple of years, we have 4 times as many satellites as compared to the satellites in the previous decade. And this obviously includes also satellites of science, where science really is driving our innovation. These are the next Earth Explorer missions of ESA. The first one in our row to come is EarthCare, to be launched in 2022 in cooperation with Japan. The next one afterwards is Biomass, 2022 again, as a target launch date, measuring forests, and the one afterwards will be FLEX, measuring photosynthetic activity, which is really looking at plants at an early stage and get indications of plant health even before you see it with your visible eyes, if a plant or vegetation is healthy or not. So this is really at the core in order to push science, and science creates innovation, and with innovation you increase the knowledge of your planet. And this is shown here, that the science results are really growing based on data from our satellites. There are 2 messages in this graph I'd like to highlight. First of all, there's obviously an increase of publications using our Earth observation satellites over the years, and you see here from 2002 to 2018. So you see that today we are publishing roughly 1,600 articles per year. That means 4 to 5 articles per day on average. So these data are really used significantly in order to find new elements and new research and new science based on Earth observation data. The other message which is quite interesting is that the color green, which is representing Sentinel satellites, which have been launched since 2014, is increasing. That means even operational satellites, operational missions, like the Copernicus missions, are delivering a lot of science, because scientists have a steady flow of data and information, which is crucial also for their research. Not only the targeted science missions, the Earth Explorers, but also Copernicus and obviously also meteorology satellites are bringing very important knowledge of our system. And let me show you here some of the achievements which have been made using this satellite data. On the left side, you see an award which has been given to the European Space Agency last year by Space News. Space News is the largest newspaper, as you know, talking and describing new developments in space. And every year there are different prizes, different awards for different activities. Last year, ESA was nominated the government agency of the year, thanks to 2 satellites which we have launched. One is Bepi Colombo, and the other one is Aeolus. Aeolus is one of the Earth Explorers, measuring wind in a cloud-free atmosphere using a novel technology which has not been used before, which is a LiDAR in ultraviolet to really get measurements of wind speed and direction. And this is quite an achievement, because the competition, as you can imagine, was tough. And ESA and also Jan is very proud of this award. On the right-hand side, you see a few of the articles that have been published in various articles in scientific journals, in Nature, and there's really a lot of scientific novelties being shown. And also this week in the Living Planet Symposium, we will learn much more about these results. Let me show you this one, which is quite a strange picture. It shows a satellite in the style of Van Gogh's Starry Night painting. It has not been Van Gogh painting this picture, because when he died in 1889, there was no satellite, so it would have needed a lot of imagination to paint a satellite. But what is shown here is a satellite painted in the style of Van Gogh by a computer applying artificial intelligence, and this is something we all are extremely much exposed to, and we are working extremely closely with artificial intelligence. And let me show you the example what we are doing. Of course, we are using artificial intelligence to analyze data, huge volumes of data as we have, but also, and this is shown here, the trend in computing, as we all know, is going extremely fast. 97, Kasparov was beaten by the Deep Blue mainframe computer. An iPhone 6, which is shown here, which is not even the latest model, has the same computing power as the Deep Blue. And then on the right-hand side, you see AI chips, AI processors, which have a much higher processing capability than the mainframes of some 20 years ago. And you see two different AI chips here on the top and on the bottom. And the one on the bottom is particularly interesting because it's less than a centimeter by a centimeter in size, and it consumes less than 1 watt of power, which is quite a radical development by a company in Ireland. And it is actually so good that low power consumption means it can also fly in space, because you don't need a lot of power, you don't create a lot of heat, and therefore you don't have a problem of heat dissipation in spacecraft. And what we have done, we have only decided a couple of months ago, just before Christmas last year, to fly this chip on the bottom right here in a spacecraft, in a small spacecraft, to test how artificial intelligence can be brought, can not only be used on ground, but can be brought to space, and really see whether we can do artificial intelligence calculations in space with this chip. The satellite will launch in September. We are looking forward. It's an experiment, but I also would like to show you how fast we can react. We have made a decision before Christmas, and in September this chip will be up on space, and we'll do some simple calculations. It's programmable, but really to test how AI can work in space at the edge. At the end, a few diagrams showing more the economic aspects of Earth observation. It was already highlighted by the DG Jan Werner that putting money into space is actually creating not only new knowledge, new science, and better understanding of our planet, but also money. And here you see some of the estimates done by Euroconsult, which are showing two curves. The red one is the development or the economic turnover of the upstream market, that means satellites and satellite construction. And the yellow curve is the one on downstream, that means data and value adding. So what do you do with this data and how you produce value for people? And you see figures here, 6 and 12%, which are quite nice and quite largely growing. You see 12.5 for Europe, which also again underlines that Earth observation is a very strong economic growth factor where if you put money in, you also make economic returns. And another study we have done recently with an external consultant, PricewaterhouseCoopers, is that if we invest money, €1 invested into the baseline innovation program, what we call Future.io, you get about €4 back in economic return, which is on top of all the science and on top of all the knowledge you gain. But also, and even more important, you also feed and develop operational programs like Copernicus, like meteorology, which are providing even more economic gain back to society, up to a factor of 10 in the case of Copernicus. And you see here quite impressive figures of economic return, both of the Copernicus program, which we do for the European Commission, and the meteorology program, which we do for EUMETSAT, our partners both on stage here today at this opening. So really, investing money in Earth observation is also good for the society. And I'm saying this very consciously because we are preparing the next decisions of our ministerial conference, as Jan was highlighting before. Space 19 Plus, what you see here in the background is the ministerial conference of 2016. We have the next one coming up in November, and again, we are putting a very strong package together of Earth observation, but also other space programs, and we will ask our ministers for money, and I can assure you that the money is well invested in space because it really brings a lot of feedback. And the vision to move towards 2040 is really going to build up the network of observation capabilities. And what you see here is the satellites that are being developed and are under development already, or some of them flying. But the vision is more that we have an integrated web of observation capabilities from satellites, from drones, from hubs, but also on ground in order to have a network of observations, to have all the data accessible in order to provide information about our planet. And this is really the way towards which we are working the next couple of years in our road towards 2040. But very important, and this is crucial in order to get there, is we need the engagement of young people. Young people are the scientists of tomorrow, are the generation of tomorrow, and they are helping us really to bring science forward. And I'm picking up here one device, which you also see in this picture here, which is this air quality measurement device, which we have distributed to schools in Milan, in Rome, and different places, in order to bring young citizens, young children on board and make them aware of pollution, but also compare this data with satellite data and engage them, and to create young scientists and really make sure that we are monitoring our planet, that we are taking the pulse of our planet towards our road 2040. Thank you very much.
Joseph, before you take a seat again, can I ask you one last question? You impressively outlined a strong program for the years to come, up to the year 2040. But what is needed to stay on top of that, and what are the personal challenges that you personally have to take on?
What is needed to stay on top? What is needed to stay on top is innovation and innovation and innovation, because only through innovation we're creating a very strong program of Earth observation. Of course, we do this in partnership with many, many partners. If I show you the Earth observation program here of ESA, this is clear that we do it with our partners in Europe, with European Commission, with EUMETSAT, but also internationally, with NASA, with JAXA, and with other partners. And I think innovation and partnership are, for me, the keywords we would like to have and to develop. And I personally feel very committed to both of them.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Will you join us again for the panel discussion later on? Thank you to Joseph Aschbacher, everyone. Now, our next guest today is the Deputy Director General of DG Growth at the European Commission, Pierre Dalzot. He's here to talk about the continuation of the Copernicus program, supporting the notion that Europe are really setting the ground running with its Earth observation programs. He will also discuss the next budget cycle and why the Commission is investing in space programs to tackle the issue of climate change and CO2 emissions. Please welcome to the stage, everyone, Pierre Dalzot.
Thank you very much, Louise. Thank you very much to all of you. I must say I'm very impressed. First of all, I'm impressed by the size of the building. I almost needed our space program Galileo to find my way in this building. So that's something which is very impressive. But I'm also impressed by the number of people who are present in this room. Because it shows one thing. It shows that Earth observation is not only for a few number of people, for a few scientists, it's actually becoming a real concern for everybody, for all of us, for all our citizens. And all the nice presentation we have seen so far confirms this. Earth observation is fundamental for our future, all of us. Maybe in my case it's shorter than for other people, but still it's important for all of us. So I don't have nice slides, because most of the slides you have seen, actually the pictures you have seen are coming from Copernicus program. So I don't need to show you those nice slides. I don't have a long speech, because I believe long speeches are boring. But I would like basically to focus on a certain number of keywords, which I believe are important for what we are doing today and what we will be doing this week. The first word is union. The second word is pride. The third word is data. And the fourth word, using Jan, my advisor words, are Homo sapiens. So first word, union. I don't mean by this the fact that Copernicus is owned by the European Union or by the European Commission. That's not my point. My point is basically that a program such as Copernicus, as Earth observation, is possible only because the European Commission, ESA, member state, and a word which has not yet been mentioned today, industry, have worked together. Without the cooperation, without the joint forces, such a program would simply not exist. And you know, in 2 weeks' time, some of you will have to vote at the European election. And when we are looking at examples of cooperation between member states, between citizens of European Union, this is a great example. Without European Union, Copernicus and the benefit of the program would simply not exist. So again, let's never forget this, that we can achieve this by working together, all of us. And I believe that's a very important message. The second word on which I would like to insist is the word pride. Again, in Europe, sometimes we have a tendency to believe that what we do is not good enough. You know, that things are better elsewhere. We look at the US, we look at China, we look at the rest of the world, and we have the feeling that we are not able to cope with what was happening elsewhere in the world. But again, if you look at the different pictures which have been shown to you, if you look at the great achievements that we have done so far, all of us together with Copernicus, you see this is not true. All of us, we have been able to develop a program which is by far the best in the world. And I'm not saying it because I'm responsible for the program. I'm saying it because others are saying it. And if I look, I have come back on one of the slides that Joseph showed us. If you look at the number of publications using now Copernicus data, it's a clear proof that our program is extremely useful. And again, if it's useful, it's because simply what we've been able to develop, all of us as services, are fundamental for our planet. You know, Copernicus is useful for agriculture. Copernicus is useful for the sea monitoring. Copernicus is also helpful when we have, you know, distress situation, when we have hurricanes, when we have, you know, storms happening somewhere. And again, we are there to help people. Just to give you a very concrete example, when there was, you know, these dramatic storms in Mozambique not so long ago, I mean, Copernicus was activated and helped the people being rescued on the ground. Because that's the objective that we want to do. We want a program which is there to serve people, to help people, to save lives. Short term, medium term, and long term. And again, you know, even the US State Department has several times thanked us, the European Commission, for helping them with our Copernicus program. Because we don't want this to be a selfish program. We want this to be a program for everybody in the world. And then move to my third point, which is data. Again, the word data has been mentioned, and you've seen that data is one of, that Copernicus is one of the largest producers of data in the world. What we really want to achieve as the European Commission with Copernicus and similar program is not necessarily launching satellites. You know, launching satellites is important, of course. You need the satellites, and we need to have the best satellites in the world, by definition. But what is even more important, we need actually to use those data. We need people to obtain those data, to do something with those data, and to create new economy based on those data. Internet of Things, new developments will use Copernicus data, and we want this. And that's why we have a free and open data policy. We want our data to be accessible to everybody. But also we want to help you to use those data. And that's why not so long ago we have created the so-called DIAs. What are the DIAs? Nobody has mentioned them today. But DIAs are actually electronic platforms where you can actually have access to those Copernicus data and have the tools to process it. Our objective is basically not only to have young scientists, because it's important to have young scientists, but we want to have young innovators creating new startups, developing new services, new products. And if you are bored somewhere, you know, in the middle of Belgium, and you don't know what to do, you go on the DIAS, you use those data, and you create something new. Because at the end of the day, space is a tool. It's a tool to create growth on Europe. It's a tool to monitor the situation, it's a tool to protect us, but it's also a tool to create jobs, because at the end of the day, we need also to have an economy which will use space as part of its development, and we believe that's something which is extremely important from our point of view as a Commission. Finally, Homo sapiens. Actually, I'm using the words from Jan, because, you know, As I told you, we have a close cooperation between ESA and the European Commission. So, you know, when there are good ideas coming from ESA, we always follow them. What I mean by Homo sapiens, I was struck by his picture, you know, of a planet which is sick because of Homo sapiens. And that's exactly what we have also in mind. We really need to continue to invest in Copernicus for the future. We need to use Copernicus also in the future to basically monitor climate change and to see exactly what's happening on our planet Earth. And when I say it, I'm not saying that we want to do it in 15 years' time, 20 years' time. We need to do it now. We need to take now the decisions which are needed to launch the satellites, which will help us to monitor the situation with respect to the climate change and our international commitment. We have no choice. We need to take those decisions now. Again, looking at the picture of the ice melting, which has been shown by Joseph, it's not a question that we need to decide in 15 years' time. It's now that we have to make the investments which are needed to do. As the European Commission, we have proposed a very ambitious scale-up of the Copernicus program. We want member states, we want the European Parliament to invest more in Copernicus because we really believe that the issues which are tackled by Copernicus and will be tackled by Copernicus in the future are fundamental. We need to take huge decisions in terms of investment to make sure that we will be able to launch those satellites which are needed to monitor the situation with respect to climate change. So, as a conclusion, I promise you I would not be too long. Probably I've already been too long. But what I would like to say is simply, let's continue this. Let's continue to work together. Let's not fight between ourselves. Because the issue is not really fighting and gaining some battles between us. The real issue is to make sure that our children in 25 years' time, in 15 years' time, in 100 years' time, will have a safe planet Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pierre. Before you leave, I do have one question for you as well. You talked a lot about how Europe is tackling climate change and CO2 emissions, but these are really worldwide issues. I know you said you're sharing the data with the US, but I've been over there a lot recently, and people are not as half aware about climate change as they are here in Europe. What plans are being made to make this a worldwide issue?
Actually, climate change is a worldwide issue. If I look at the issue of melting ice if you look at the situation in Alaska, it's dramatic. So what we really are fully aware of that we need to convince and we need to talk to our partners in the world, because it's true, climate change is not a European question, it's a worldwide question. So we are reaching out with the US, but not only with the US. China is a very important player in this context. And so really the idea is to develop new missions, to new Earth observation missions with our partners on a worldwide basis, because it's only like this that we will be able to have a clear and a good assessment of the situation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pierre Delceau, everyone. So far this morning, we've focused on our space program. So now it is time to talk about the data and how that's used to make applications that are accessible to the citizens. Horizon 2020 has been running since 2014 as Europe's research and innovation program. It's helped many startups reach their projected goals with funding, support, recognition, and encouragement. The next wave of entrepreneurs is waiting in the wings for the launch of the new initiative, Horizon Europe. Our next speaker will dive into this program in a little more detail, as well as talk about the launch of the European Innovation Council. This will provide new forms of funding to innovative companies in order to get research and ideas out of the lab and into the real world. Please put your hands together for the Deputy Director General of DG RTD at the European Commission, Patrick Child.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that introduction, and I will try to cover all the topics that you have announced for my brief remarks. But firstly, I'd like to say how happy I'm to be here in Milan and for this Living Planet Symposium, and to thank the European Space Agency for putting on such an impressive program. I mean, I'd like really to concentrate on three topics. Firstly, the issue that has been present in all our discussions so far, the vital and existential challenges of climate change and sustainability, which I believe will be at the center of the political agenda of the new generation of political leadership in the European Union, which will be coming into office later this year. Secondly, I will indeed say a word or two about Horizon 2020 and the future prospects for Horizon Europe. And then finally, I'd like to highlight the importance of international cooperation, and in particular the European Commission's commitment to the Group on Earth Observation, GEO, and the international collaboration that flows from that. So on climate change and sustainability, as we've heard, we are facing an urgent and existential challenge, both in terms of climate change, for biodiversity, and sustainable development more generally. And I think that this also presents an existential challenge for the scientific community and for all of us gathered here in this conference, in our capacity to provide robust and credible evidence base for policy making as we confront the huge economic and societal transformations that lie ahead if we are to address the challenges of decarbonization. And I think these challenges are well examined in two important initiatives from the European Commission recently. Firstly, our communication on a clean planet for all, a contribution to the debate on how our medium-term strategy for decarbonization in response to the Paris Agreement should frame the discussion in the coming years. And secondly, our broader reflection paper on Towards a Sustainable Europe by 2030, the progress that we're making together in addressing the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And I think these two crucial documents will frame the political debate in the European Union for the coming years as we address the challenges and as we prepare for the mandate also of the next Commission. The transition towards a carbon-neutral economy and sustainable Europe in 2030, of course, requires us to advance knowledge of the Earth's system, its dynamic and interactions with human activities and within the boundaries of our planet. And our policy agenda on sustainable development and climate will seek to promote breakthroughs in the application of Earth observation data for knowledge transfer and modeling scenarios. And this is particularly important in the contributions that we collectively make to the work of the IPCC. The delivery of models that are necessary to predict, for example, sea level rise, change in ice sheets, which are relevant, of course, for shipping routes and the availability of food supplies, and many other phenomena like land use and degradation. These are things that require strong interdisciplinary scientific efforts combined with solid input from environmental observation capacities. And these things can only be achieved by building strategic partnerships to connect existing observation systems, both from space and at ground and sea level, through programs that support research and innovation, such as Horizon 2020 and the future program Horizon Europe. This brings me to my second main issue. So under Horizon 2020, our current research and innovation program, the Commission has been supporting scientific community in advancing knowledge on Earth system and Earth observation in what we hope is an overall coherent and balanced approach. So we have, under our societal challenge program addressing climate action, environment, resource efficiency and raw materials, a focus in particular on developing GEOS, a comprehensive and sustained global environmental observation and information system. And in this area, we are trying to stimulate the smart use of strategic resources to support the development of evidence-based policies to foster new environmental and climate services and develop new opportunities in global markets. And under our separate program on the leadership in industrial technologies, particularly the component dealing with space, we are working closely, of course, with our colleagues in developing Copernicus and the exploitation of existing European space infrastructure. But also we're seeking to develop innovative products and services based on remote sensing, geopositioning, and other types of satellite-enabled data. And as Pierre has just reminded us that last year, the Commission put forward a package of proposals for the next financial programs for the European Union covering the period 2021-2027. A reinforced space program, important component of that. But from our perspective also, there is the Horizon Europe proposals for the next generation of research and innovation funding, what we are working on. And in that context, we've proposed a very significant increase in the overall budget, up to 100 billion euros to cover the period 2021 to 2027. What our Commissioner, Carlos Moedas, has often described the program as an evolution rather than a revolution, so building on the strengths of Horizon 2020, but also introducing some important new areas. So firstly, the concept that we will be trying to articulate and promote our support around a number of specific missions, so concepts which promote interdisciplinary cooperation, but also capture the imagination of our citizens and make what we're doing in research and innovation at a European level more directly visible and relevant to the way that they are living their lives. Secondly, we are seeking to introduce a new emphasis on support for innovation. In the European Union, we are extremely good at producing excellent science, and we are relatively bad, if not very bad, at translating our excellent science into commercial success. And that's what the European Innovation Council is all about. It's about identifying opportunities for scaling up or starting up of new business opportunities to get our good ideas out of the science labs and into the marketplace. And with colleagues in the department at the moment, we are doing a roadshow around all EU member states to present the opportunities of the new European Innovation Council. And for those of you who are coming from the sort of communities where innovation and innovation funding is an important thing, then I think that this will open some very important new opportunities. Specifically on Earth observation within Horizon Europe, we'll be looking to cover activities ranging from the development of innovative Earth observation systems, new products and services addressing user needs, and the integration of Earth observation data into solutions supporting the transition towards a carbon-neutral society and sustainable Europe by 2030. And I'm very happy to say that there's been excellent progress on the preparation of the legal proposals underpinning the Horizon Europe program, that in the last few weeks we reached an agreement with our member states in the Council and with the European Parliament on what we call a partial general agreement, that is a sort of a consensus around the main elements of the program, which will now be the basis for a very intense process of stakeholder consultation, starting with an important conference in Brussels in late September, where we want to work together in a sort of spirit of co-creation with all the stakeholders in our research and innovation program in order to make the best possible use of the money that we will ultimately have. And I'm confident that a strong continuing commitment to Earth observation and also to the work of the international group on Earth observation, GEO, beyond 2020, will figure prominently in our future work. And I'd like, therefore, just to draw things to a conclusion by highlighting the importance that we see also on the international dimension of communication and our commitment to Earth observation through GEO, and in particular to bring the discussion in the international arena a bit beyond perhaps the traditional focus on data interoperability and the technical solutions that are vitally needed, of course, to make the optimal use of data that is increasingly available. But what I said at the beginning, also to make that data relevant and useful, credible, as an evidence base for policy making in the huge challenges that we're facing. I'm also very happy that we've been making progress in our cooperation with ESA, with the European Space Agency, in the area of Earth observation. I'm very happy that Joseph and I will be able later today to raise to a new level of ambition the cooperation between the relevant services in ESA and in the European Commission in this area because of the, I think, the vital importance of cooperation between all our different activities needs to be fully exploited. So finally, I just want to pull out the three main messages that I have for you. Firstly, that climate and sustainability are going to be a much bigger political priority in the next cycle of political leadership in the European institutions, and in particular, I think, firmly on the agenda of the next Commission. With our proposals for Horizon Europe, we can build on the success of Horizon 2020 and continue to support very active work on Earth observation to provide a credible and robust evidence base for policy making. And that finally, we are deeply committed to international cooperation because we are seeking to address global existential challenges which can only be met with global responses. So thank you very much for your attention.
A last quick question for the scientists out there. When are they going to be able to submit their proposals for Horizon Europe?
Well, Horizon Europe will come on stream in 2021. So we will be doing our first calls for proposals probably a little bit before that so that we can have a smooth transition. But we need you before we get to the stage of applying for the money. We need your help already now and in the coming months as we seek to work with all the stakeholders in the programming and the design of the Horizon Europe program so that we can make the best possible use of the resources that we have at a European level.
And they can find more information on the website, can they?
We have many websites here.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to Patrick Child, everybody.
Thank you.
When it comes to meteorology, Earth observation data is critical. EUMETSAT has been partners with ESA for more than 30 years now, proving the strength of a good collaboration. It's a major contributor to space-based data for global weather systems. Engineers and scientists are now in full preparation for the second generation of METOP polar orbiting satellites and the third generation of Meteosat geostationary satellites, the first of which is due to launch next year. But EUMETSAT's data is used for much more than just meteorology. EUMETSAT's data records are unique in the fact that they stretch back for more than 40 years. And this long series of data records is essential for observing climate changes. Forecasting of flooding, droughts, winds, and oceanography are just some of the areas which data from the satellites contribute. And here to talk more about all of this is the Director General of EUMETSAT, Alain Ratier.
Good morning, everybody. So let me first say it's a great pleasure to be here in Milan, a city of culture and modernity. And Louise almost said it all, so my job is very simple now. My purpose is to tell you a bit about the European Meteorological Satellite Program, which will enter a new phase starting in 2021, creating large opportunities for the society, but also for the research community. You've just heard about Horizon Europe, and this is certainly an asset. So let me say a few words about EUMETSAT, what we are and what we do. So EUMETSAT is certainly about joining forces, because 30 countries have joined together to establish satellite systems for decades, for long-term observation, long-term commitment, systems they could not no one could afford alone. And as you know, we have a long partnership with ESA because ESA is developing our first satellites based on our requirements, and we established the full system ground segment and to deliver data over a decade. And as you see on this chart, our main purpose is to provide observation for forecasting. You've heard from Pierre Delceau about the Idai cyclone in Mozambique. There are also others, unfortunately. And you've heard the great role of Copernicus to help managing disasters. Our role is to support forecasts, to work with Earth system modeling, to deliver, to make sure the right forecasts are delivered. In other words, we are about preparedness, while Copernicus is about response, but we need both. And this illustrates the great cohesion of Europe with these two pillars. But of course, EUMETSAT is also has a role in climate change monitoring. This is part of our convention, and we need to monitor much more than the atmosphere. We need to monitor the ocean, the atmospheric composition. Modern meteorology is much more than just the atmosphere. And that's why we are part of the Europe team for Copernicus, together with ESA and the Commission. And you see on the left side other type of forecasts and weather forecasting, air quality, and ocean forecasting. So today we have we exploit a fleet of 11 satellites in orbit, from geostationary orbit, very important for what we call sometimes the forecast of the last chance, the forecast of the rapidly evolving high-impact weather phenomena, and also the METOP satellites from the polar orbit to deliver the global data which numerical weather prediction model needs, and you will hear from Florence Rabier later on. And what you see in yellow, we are also operating on behalf of the European Union in partnership with ESA, some of the Copernicus mission, Sentinel-3, the marine mission, but also JASON, which is also a Copernicus mission for monitoring mean sea level. So we talked about economic benefits, and the fact is that satellite data are today indispensable for good weather forecasting. What you can see on this slide is that 27% of the error reduction in day one forecast due to all observations can be attributed to the EUMETSAT satellites. And this, in terms of socio-economic benefit, turns to more than 5 billion euros per year in the EU. So you understand what it means, and you heard figures, but it's clear that for our program, the benefit to cost ratio is at least 20. As I said, we observe much more than the atmosphere, and what you see is sea ice, ocean surface wind field, also atmospheric composition, and this is the main rationale for our strong involvement in Copernicus, because of course, extracting the best possible synergy from the Copernicus observation and our own observation is key and is a multiplying factor, if you want. So the next generation of meteorological satellite systems is under development. This is a key message I want to give you today. Meteosat third generation, we will have 2 different satellites, and these satellites will be very innovative. We'll have world premiere instruments. We will have, for the first time, the capability to observe what we call the 4D weather cube, so the atmosphere in 3 dimensions, the structure of the temperature and moisture fields, the clouds, the lightning, and this every 2.5 minutes. So you understand the extraordinary potential of this new capability. And this will start in 2021. We have also under development, again in partnership with ESA, the METOP-SG, what we call on our side the EUMETSAT second generation polar system, including the ground segment, and we'll have 2 satellites with different payload. Again, we'll have world premiere instruments to monitor aerosols, to monitor ice cloud. Cirrus have an interesting role in climate change and additional greenhouse effect. This will be monitored for the first time operationally for more than 20 years. And again, we will start in 2022. The synergy for Copernicus, this one may be a bit, it's an illustration for the monitoring of atmospheric composition. So we will fly Copernicus instrument on our satellites as additional instrument, and combining with our own instrument, we will measure trace gases, atmospheric composition from the ultraviolet to the thermal infrared. And with this, you can access many more species than with just one part of the spectrum. So this is the perspective. Again, we will, from 2021, in partnership with ESA, we will launch 1 satellite of the next generation every year, meaning that in 2025, we will have established a new generation system, a full in-orbit configuration with 5 next generation satellites. So this is where Europe is moving. This is the other pillar than Copernicus, but as I said in the introduction, there is a lot of synergy and cohesion and synergy. And it's certainly a lot of new, very innovative data will come from these systems. And again, it's an asset for the Horizon Europe program. And for the user community in general, the data will be available to everybody. Thank you very much.
I have a quick question for you, Alain, before you go, if that's okay. It's great to hear how this new series is going to stand out from the current one, but will this allow Europe to remain world leaders in meteorological data and Earth observation?
I think the world leader is a bit, the observation, the global observing system is coordinated by a UN agency, WMO, and everybody needs to contribute because we need observation much more from the European component. So the ambition of Europe is to bring the capacity a bit further, but it's hand in hand working with the US, with China, with India, with Japan, to have a global system which has impact. Pierre Delceau had 4 words, I will add 1, impact. We want to have impact on forecasts and also continue climate data record to know a bit more about our changing climate.
Okay, well, we look forward to what's to come. Thank you very much for now. To Alain Ratier. We've talked today a lot about our budgets for the next 7 years. We've talked about Earth observation strategies with Europe 2040. We've talked about Horizon Europe and the next wave of funding for developers. But as we know, development, manufacturing, and implementing ideas takes time. And that is why it is so important that we have the next generation on board with what we are doing, because they will be, of course, the voices for tomorrow. Earlier on, Josef mentioned about Swedish environmental activist Greta Thunberg. She set up the concept Fridays for Future. This movement spread fast around Europe and has got many representatives in many different countries. Jakob Blasel is the German representative of this initiative, and he can be seen interviewing politicians and holding them accountable for changes that haven't yet been made. So luckily for us, he was able to join us today, and I'd now like to welcome our youngest speaker to the stage at the Living Planet Symposium. Ladies and gentlemen, Jakob Blasel.
Hey. My name is Jakob Blasel, and I'm one of those 1.6 million students who are striking for climate. In many countries, we call a movement Fridays for Future, starting from the original idea to strike on a weekly basis on Fridays by Greta Thunberg. Right now, I don't want to tell you how much our movement is still growing, how many children still join the strike every week, and in what way we put heavy pressure on people in power. I rather want to tell you why the movement has developed such a strength and why our generation is the generation most conscious about the climate crisis. I think the answer is simple. I'm one of the living persons on this continent who would suffer the most under the climate crisis. I am one of the people who would actually have to live with the consequences many of you are projecting for the next decades. I am one of the people who have to fear their future. When older generations hear the same facts as I do, they are kind of smiling them away. They see possible paths of the IPCC report, and they rather find excuses to not make any decisions than to face the issue and act properly. In my view, world leaders don't take the climate crisis seriously because they don't have a reason to. They don't have the same reason to act as my generation does. Of when Greta says she wants you to panic, she is the voice of our whole generation, because we have a good reason to panic every day. We panic because we see scientists on the one hand showing us good and bad scenarios for the future, and on the other hand, we see politicians in charge and people ignoring the way out and leading us into the worst scenarios of the future. Some of you might say that it's not the right time to panic yet. But if we don't tell them that the house is on fire right now and that Greenland is burning right now, they won't realize that it will be on fire if we continue our way of living. I want to thank all of you for contributing to scientific research leading to the knowledge about the climate crisis and the ecological breakdown. You are the basic for us challenging world leaders to make our future possible. You are the people who enable us to have our future in our hands. You are the scientists for future. Since you are delivering this important research, you are also carrying a great responsibility. You have to keep being scientifically correct, but also help to deliver the consequences to people that people should take from your research. The Fridays for Future movement is trying to explain these consequences. With our demands, we are trying to unite behind the science. But even if we are trying to, we can't always get everything right. I think that many scientists should make it their job to show the public what options we have to do, what options we do have, and that our decisions will have consequences for the future. At this point, it is everybody's responsibility to make one thing clear. It is our choice right now between a prosperous future and an unstoppable climate and ecological breakdown. Usually, when I have the opportunity to speak to such a big crowd of people, I'm trying to deliver scientific facts. I'm trying to spread the knowledge about our climate research, and I'm trying to spread awareness about the climate crisis. But since you all know the facts, here I am going to tell you more about climate strikes in Germany and Europe. And one important thing I have to say about Europe is that whoever says that European climate politics are ambitious, whoever says that is lying. The European Union just cancelled the climate goal to be at zero emissions by 2050. They just cancelled that, also with the help of the German government and with the help of many European governments. They just throw those targets away. And whoever read the Paris Agreement knows that 2050 is the global goal, and we should rather reduce emissions in Europe way faster. We have to be in Europe down 80% emissions by 2030, and 2050 is even too late, and people can't even discuss that anymore because of climate politics who are far away from ambitious. I started striking on December 14, and since then many things changed. People became way more aware of the climate crisis. Children in over 400 German cities started striking, planned strikes with thousands and 10,000s of people. Children are rising up, and I'm asking, why aren't politicians rising up against the climate crisis? So we are focusing on the European election right now because we want to make European climate politics ambitious, and we want to make the European elections about climate, because everyone has a choice to act against the climate crisis, but not everyone has a vote. And So we are striking on May 24th globally to have the biggest impact on the European elections we can as children of these countries. And I'm asking you to vote climate, and I'm asking you to speak up and to stand up against the climate crisis, and not only tell people what you find out, but also tell people what it means what you found out. And I hope that in the future, humanity will be able to not just identify the climate crisis, but also to act against it. The time to do that is right now, and everybody in this room, everybody on this continent, and everybody in the world has to do whatever it takes to stop the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jakob. One question for you before you go. A nice round of applause there for you. One question for you before you go on animal farming, as the UN states that this is responsible for 14.5% of greenhouse gas emissions, and red meat and dairy making up 65% of that. What do you have to say on that subject?
I think we have to take emission targets as a whole thing, and animal production is one of them, and it's a scandal how the European Union is acting on agriculture. The European Union is subsidizing all kind of agriculture in Europe without even looking at the ecological aspect of it. They're giving farmers money just for farming, and nobody is focusing on an ecological farming and on ecological animals.
Okay.
So I think we have to change that in Europe, and we have to change that globally, because industrial food production is not a solution.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your contributions today, everybody. Jakob Blasel. As George Benson sang back in the 70s, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. That is, of course, all of our duty to do, as Jakob said. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our speakers on this stage for their contributions, not just this morning, but what they're doing every single day to make this a better place for those we leave behind. Please give them all a round of applause as you like to return to your seats. Thank you. No, it's okay. Now, of course, although that song reference there was very judicious, it was also very appropriate, as it's time now for a musical interlude. Yes, we're going to take a little break from talking about Earth observation and allow our brains to refresh with classical music from the Conservatory of Milan. In its 200-year history, the Conservatory has educated some of Italy's most prominent musicians and conductors. Today, it is the largest institute of musical education in the country. We're pleased to present 4 of the most talented young students from the Conservatory to you now. This string quartet represents the excellence of the Institute, and they soon leave for Japan to play at the International Chamber Music Festival in Kyoto for 2 weeks. We have Francesco Scalesi Civati, Davide Scalesi Civati and Francesco Melis, both of them on the violin, Matilde Simonato on the viola, and Andrea Cavallazzi on the cello. We will be following our musicians with a panel discussion on the future of Earth observation, so I'll ask you all to please stay in your seats for that. For now, though, I give you our talented string quartet. Thank you very much to the students of the Milan Conservatory. Such a mesmerizing performance. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate it. Now, how can we better adapt our lives to reduce our carbon footprint? What can we do better to prepare for extreme weather conditions? How can we protect our space programs from cyber attacks? And what can we do to prevent the loss of more biodiversity? These are just some of the many concerns highlighted in surveys like the Global Risk Report. So we're going to finish this morning's ceremony by addressing many of these questions as we take a deep dive into the future of Earth observation. For this discussion, we are honored to be joined by 5 industry professionals: the chairman of ACEO, Martin Visbeck, the DG of ECMWF, Florence Rabier, the CEO of a microsatellite manufacturer, ICEYE, Raphael Modreski, the CEO of Euroconsult, Pacôme Rebellion, and the Director of Earth Observation Programs at ESA, Josef Aschbacher. Please give them a round of applause as they come up to the stage. You can. I would also like to welcome our Director General of ESA back to the stage, who will be moderating the discussion. So please put your hands together once again for Jan Werner.
Okay.
Jan, the floor is yours.
Okay, so as you heard, we have now a rather impressive round of people, and we can have a look into the future of different aspects of Earth observation. And we have with us Martin Visbeck from ACEO, as you heard. He is, at the same time, he is our advisor for our boards. And therefore, my first question is, of course, so give us advice, what to do, especially what are, how to increase our knowledge, and how to, when I come back to what we heard in the final speech of Jakob, what should we do, Martin, in order to educate people who are so far not really knowledgeable about all what we know so far?
Well, Jan, thank you very much, and welcome to all of you to the Living Planet Symposium. I'm actually from GEOMAR, the Helmholtz Center from Ocean Research in Kiel, and teach at Kiel University. But in this function, I'm here as the chair of the Advisory Committee for Earth Observations for the Earth Observing Program at ESA. And what we do is we actually try to give advice to Joseph and the agency about how to select the best scientific missions for the envelope program,
how to prepare ESA and the Earth Observing Program in this future scenario. We heard this morning about new space, Space 4.0. On the one hand, about the challenges of the future, I think Jakob, Blasel, Greta Thunberg are reminding us that we're not engaging enough in the dialogue about their future. It's all too much about us and now and the next funding cycle. But at the trio, we do take that look into the future and looking at what society is expecting from science, from Earth observing. And I think clearly the sweet spot of the European Space Agency is in data provision, is in innovation, new technologies. And what we're looking at is where is that opportunity space? How can we use innovation and sensors to inform and select the best satellite missions? Just this year, Joseph, we had 21 excellent proposals from the community for the next envelope missions. And we at the ACEO, 16 people from around Europe, had this hard task to select of those 21 excellent ideas, 3 that we would put forward into the next stage. I think it showed to me that space science, observing of our planet, is highly in demand. Excellence in evolution, new sensors, new constellations, new opportunities are still there, but now coming back to what to do.
Yes, but you see, what I would like to hear from you especially, you are advising us, I understand that. So, but how to advise or educate the general public about what we are finding out?
So I think there's 3 ways we can do that. First, we heard this morning in making the information and data available freely and around the globe as a first step. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has access to it. So I think ESA is doing a very good job in working with educators, with school children, with school teachers, and to promote education in the sciences, but also promote the capabilities of what Earth observation provide. Second, I think in ACEO it's very clear we're making an effort to also speak to the public about what we learned and what is changing and how science can help us to prepare for the future. So my advice to you is support those in the sciences, in the agency, who want to give public speeches. How do we engage with the next generation? Well, we make their voice heard, we take them serious, and we prepare them for their future, the challenges about that. That is about education, that is about thinking about the future, but it's also about dialogue between the private sector, science, agencies, European Union, nationals, but also bringing it right down to the local and community sector. We don't have enough of that education about space science, about science in general, and about the future of our planet and our generation. I'm wishing us this week that we engage in that, prepare ourselves for that. But Jan, I think every one of us can do a lot there. And I know you yourself are putting yourself out there in the communication. I know Florence is doing a lot of that. And I think that's what it takes. It takes us as people to take our job serious, but also act as citizens and talk about the challenges.
That means each and everyone in this room should be an ambassador for that.
Absolutely, yes. Here are an assembled experts of, as we heard from Jakob, of scientists, people in the operations, technical expertise, but we ourselves can speak about our jobs, speak about the excitement of space, speak about the excitement of data, and how that can help into the future, supported by funding programs like from the Commission, but actually also our citizens and fellows. So I would encourage us all to do more, to double up our effort, to talk about the good things that we do, and speak about the future and what space and space science has to offer for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Florence, you are already working with us and you are using the Earth observation for not only weather forecast, but also for more general topics concerning climate change. My very clear question to you is, what is missing? What should we do in order to fill some gap which is still open for you in order to give even better perspectives for the future?
Okay, so I can start by saying how already we use maybe your observations. And so we are doing global weather forecasting. So obviously we can't just rely on weather stations because we rely on everything on Earth and we observe all the conditions, all that is needed to do weather forecasts for a few days beyond. And at the moment, all the satellites we use, of all the data we use, 95% come from satellite. And we have they are not all coming from Europe. A long time ago.
But the best data comes from Europe.
Well, let's say 1/3 come from the US, 1/3 from Europe, and 1/3 from the rest of the world, from Asia, typically. Okay. But definitely, it's true that Europe has set the standards with very high quality, bringing technology to a new level with MSG, with Aeolus, Sentinel-5P for atmospheric composition, and this really makes a difference. Alain Ratier talked about METOP contributing the most, and what does it matter if the forecast is a bit more accurate? Well, it does matter for economic impact. As we heard from Pierre Delceau, you know, it affects all sectors of the economy, but also for saving lives and property. We talked about Mozambique, but really satellites can make the difference between forecasting a hurricane or not. And what are we missing now? We have a lot of data from the temperature, humidity, clouds, but clearly the wind is something we need to observe better. So we are very excited about Aeolus. As you know, we are starting to monitor the quality of Aeolus, how it will impact the forecast. But MTG will also bring, you know, this very rapid succession of profile data over an area will really help do wind profiling as well. So that's maybe one of the components. Then also with the advancement of science, how we can assimilate better data, we can now also use better the information on hydrometeor, on the rain droplets in the atmosphere. That's why we are really excited about EarthCare, and we are really preparing actively to use data from EarthCare in the future. And I think what's interesting in weather forecasting is not just about the atmosphere. I think Alain already mentioned that all the components of the Earth system, you know, contribute. So we need more observations of the ocean, of the land, of the sea ice, because all this actually contributes. So we are very excited about what we're going to observe better, even on the sea ice, as I said, because the Arctic is also a very important component, not only for weather forecasts, but also for climate change. I will finish maybe with just CO2.
Yes.
So it's not weather forecasting, but we use some of the same tools to also, we are going to monitor better the CO2, and in particular with the planned new Sentinel, having an anthropogenic emission of CO2 observed from space. This, I think, will really take us a step further for society.
Okay. So, Joseph, so 2 words I have to ask you. So one is CO2. When will it happen? When can we really get data from space about that? And the other thing is, it was mentioned Aeolus is so important. Aeolus, as I understood, was so far a scientific satellite to also to test the possibilities. So when will we have an operational system?
It is always tricky if my boss asks me these kind of questions, but on the first one, CO2, indeed, CO2 is measured today, but it's not good enough, if I may say, in order to really distinguish anthropogenic from natural sources and on a routine basis in operational systems. So what, together with the European Commission, we are preparing is to develop a CO2 mission, which would do exactly that. The resolution is extremely good. We are still working on the specifications, but it's in the order of 2 by 2 kilometers, which is good enough to distinguish really anthropogenic sources. The request from the European Commission is to have the operational system ready by 2026. That is very challenging, and I'm looking at...
Others are flying to the moon in that time. So.
This is true, but building a CO2 satellite is not an easy one, otherwise it would have been done already 50 years ago as flying to the moon. So we are doing also rocket scientists at the edge, but just looking at the problems on the Earth. Second point, Aeolus. Indeed, Aeolus is quite a unique mission. It's really fantastic what has been achieved. I don't want to mention the delays of how long it took us to get the technology up and running. But we did launch last year, and I have to say the first results of Aeolus are just eye-opening and stunning. Now the community is asking us for an operational system. What we are preparing together with EUMETSAT is really now, and with ECMWF, is to develop such an operational system, and I will come back to you, Jan, with a funding request in 2022 in order to build the first satellite of probably a constellation.
So that's the trap, if like the journalist is asking questions. But Florence, I will come back to one point to you. So you mentioned that you get data from different sources worldwide. Pierre Delceau said very clearly that the European the European basis, and this is not only the European Commission but also ESA, free and open data access. Is that the same all over the world, or is there something we have to do?
Well, we have to continue to contribute to exchange data all around the world, and we are really benefiting from having satellites from China, from Japan, etc. So I think this is really the basis on which we should continue and make special effort. And even if new players come into the system, we should encourage sharing of data, because really for the benefit, in particular of my field, numerical weather prediction, it's very important to have access to all the data around the world. We should continue to push for that and coordinate it globally.
Okay, thank you. So now I would like, with the next two, I would like to make a small step in a special direction, and that means into the world of changing, meaning space 4.0, new space, etc. So Rafael, my question to you is, tell us just what is your opinion concerning the development of satellites for Earth observation from a commercial point of view. Will it be single satellites? Will it more constellations? Can you tell us a little bit of view into the crystal ball?
Crystal ball. Certainly, I will try to share with you my opinion, or what is kind of our current view on the situation. Maybe a few words of introduction. Why am I getting this question? Actually, I represent a little bit over here the new space part of the community. Wanted to mention that per the previous panel that we were happily a grantee of Horizon 2020 grant, so it definitely does help to build new companies. So ISI, a company that I co-founded, builds small synthetic aperture radar satellites. They are about a 50 to 100 kilogram class. We've launched 2. We are preparing to launch a few more satellites. Our final aim is to launch a constellation of at least 18 satellites to provide reliable and very high temporal resolution Earth observation capability. That's, I believe, the question, how the satellites will be built. I think there's probably a space for both types. I often get the question, do we as New Space consider Copernicus or programs similar to that as competitive to what we are doing in a commercial space? Probably the answer is absolutely not. We consider them very complementary. There's a lot of stuff that can't be done with small satellites. This is where the large global collectors are necessary. Weather data is probably one of the very, very interesting examples, even though with weather data we see that both small satellites and big satellites contribute a little bit. Inspire probably is a very interesting example. I think, however, that we do need to recognize that space is infrastructure as any other, whether it's road infrastructure, rail infrastructure, or transportation. And within each of those areas, we see that there is place for both public players as well as private players. I mean, there's public transportation provided to all of you in the form of a metro, which would have never happened as a commercial endeavor. However, there are bus routes or plane companies that provide you services on commercial basis, and I believe this is the place where the new space companies will come to. I don't know exactly how the space will shape. I don't know exactly how many big satellites versus how many small satellites will be launched. Small ones are cheaper, so ultimately the absolute number will be bigger. But what is going to be the share of the contribution? I would say 50-50 is my guess.
Who is your main customer?
Right, so right now what we do is we don't just provide the pictures. We provide information services. So we take the pictures, we derive certain information pieces out of those pictures, and then we deliver those to customers. Very often customers that have never seen, especially a SAR picture before. We work very often with insurance industry. We work quite often with banks, with agriculture. We work with anyone who needs reliable information about what's happening on the ground. Very often those users actually have the information right now, but it's being gathered either through planes, so they fly over specific locations, or they have people or sensors distributed around the ground. But if the problem is more global, like for instance global oil supply or ice detection, you can't really rely on planes. So we do enter different parts of the economy, and I believe this is we look at the investing in space a very similar way as you do. When I go and tries to raise a round of financing for ISI, we say that every euro ends up being 10 euro in the pocket.
Give us a little bit inside view in your business plan. How much is of your overall budget comes from public sources and how much comes from real private sources?
Real private sources. Almost entire our budget comes from private sources. ISA is privately funded company. We are happy to have 12 international investors, both European as well as from the United States. We have received financing from the Finnish government. We have received financing from the European Commission through the Horizon 2020 program, but those are smaller sums. The company that actually deals with space, any new space company that really aims to launch a constellation of small satellites needs to gather probably tens of millions. In our case, so far it has been over $65 million, out of which about 5 has been public financing. So this is mainly private financed.
How do you see the future role of public space agencies versus, or however, interaction with commercial entities, private entities?
There's probably a set of areas where this interaction happens. So interestingly enough, it starts with the commercial entities being users of whatever is being produced by the public entities. We have our own satellites, we build them and we launch them in order to fill certain gaps, in order to be able to create products that ultimately we sell to our customers. But we on daily basis use Sentinel data in order either to convince the customers that Earth observation is real or that certain things can be created, or whenever we don't have a satellite and there is a Sentinel passing by, we're actually trying to take advantage of that data. And I know that there are companies that don't build their own satellites, but their entire business models are built based on nothing else but usage of Sentinel data. And I do think that from this perspective, Europe has a tremendous opportunity to grow those companies. On the other hand, this complementarity where certain types of services can be provided perhaps more efficiently through commercial providers, and then there's those services that could just never work from the business model perspective. There is this private-public partnership model over here where I think personally the easiest way for ESA is to, or for any public agency, is to look for service provisions. As has been mentioned actually by you during the previous panel, it's not that important to look at the color of the satellite or its shape or which country does it come from or how old are the people that have built it. As long as the service is working, that's all that matters ultimately.
Lawrence, are you also using data from private companies like this, or?
We are usually using data from big operators like ESA, EUMETSAT, NOAA, CMA, etc. Of course, we can use anything. It's just that they have to be provided by us. And I think we will keep the strong relationship we have with these big agencies coordinated at the international level that are guaranteed. We are setting the requirements and you are all trying to minimize the gaps in our user requirements. And I believe there is some space for others. But I think it's probably agencies like ESA that are going to stimulate the development of these activities by getting private players to come into play. At the moment, we don't use we don't have any contracts directly with any private satellite providers.
We can talk about this after.
Pacom, I come to you. You are, of course, you really have an overview of the market development. Coming back to the same question, where do you see the trend of this market? First of all, is it still increasing, number one? Number two, what will be the roles of the different players in that, the public players, the private players, the operators, and so on? Give us a little bit of inside view.
All right, so I first hope that the short-term future will be as harmonious as the music we just heard before the session. That would be great. In general, we are very much in a breakthrough innovation period with potential creation of some form of extraordinary value, which is triggering the interest of private entrepreneurs, of some of the GAFAs and others that believe in the short, middle, or even long-term value creation that can exist through the current technologies and capabilities. And then in that concept, there will also be attempts, trials, failures, which is the nature of such period. I think we are very much in the first phase of what is called new space of 4.0. Many of the constellation concepts of the program, of the services are being developed right now. I think, as I just mentioned, they have several satellites up for launch this year. A number of other constellation projects shall be deployed in the next 2 to 3 years, as was shown on one of the charts. And to a certain extent, the full service delivery and the new leverage is to come and to be transformed into value for the end users in the next 5 years. And clearly so there are 2 to 3 aspects there. One is there shall be plenty of data, but what data, what stability of products, etc., all of that will have to be figured out and confirmed, as end users need some form of stability in the product. So innovating is good, but you also need to transform that into something really usable and usable months after months by end users. As we see today as well, even many of the suppliers have to work together to deliver a number of contracts and services, because one constellation cannot necessarily deliver all the data you need. And many of the future constellations, for certain type of resolution or capabilities, may provide you all Earth every day, or only certain points of Earth every day, or every quarter or week, or depending on how sensitive they may be to weather, if it's optical and others. So one point is how those data can be aggregated together or shared between the partners. And certainly the resolution coming with it will be the temporal resolution. And as opposed to data that were, for most of it, yearly, if not multi-year services being delivered, the ability of the sector to develop products that would be on a quarterly, half-year basis to a variety of users is the next horizon. And as this happens, it has to be transformed into much more of a subscription service or subscription type of consumption, as opposed to data sales of just one product being delivered at a time. And this transformation is to happen with the data layer, but with also a lot of the software development layer. So AI is a lot talked about. I mentioned machine learning. When we talk to the player exactly how much they can do and deliver today, it's really step by step. And there is kind of the generic layer of identifying objects or certain items. And the second, which is the application layer in terms of, for a smart city or for yourself, what does this object mean in context with non-satellite sources as well, information being grouped together. So we believe in the value creation. We also see that for many users, there is that 1, 2, 3 years time lag to create awareness, to make trials, product tests with especially new users that have never used satellite data in particular. And so that the management of that transition period to a new model is, I think, the real exciting time, but also challenge of the next 3 to 4 years for the industry.
Okay. I have a further question to you. We are talking about the beauty of data, and I agree, this is fine. We are talking about using data and making out of the data information which can be conveyed to the public. Okay, I like it, very nice. But we have also some security and safety aspects with it, meaning the safety aspects. I mentioned the Sentinel case of collisions in space debris, if even that our satellites becomes space debris at a certain point. And then on the security part, the question is how to avoid fake news from satellites. Do you see any special actions in that region, in that dimension, also frequencies? I mean, we do not have an indefinite number of frequencies available, so how to handle that one?
I would say so. Certainly, I think at large, resilience, autonomy, security is a topic for the entire space environment, Earth observation and other aspects. So the safety in the satellites in orbit is certainly one, and the debris is a question in the middle. The second is the cyber security of the assets themselves and how protected, how can they be managed overall. And the third one would be certainly will be more data, but the security at the information level product and the software between the data and the end user will also be certainly a high area of sensitivity. And from that standpoint, certain services might be purely just, let's say, commercially grade, and we have a certain level of control, and some of the more critical services, or there could be different layers of security being offered by the solutions, for sure, and different level of certifications that will be required for the users to be comfortable with those services. So as any industry, I think it will be an ongoing process, and whether some regulation will have to be put in place, will it be for data usage or let's say for the information product being delivered and certification of software? It already exists in certain environments. It will certainly become more mature for this industry as well.
Martin, I had the feeling that you wanted also to say a few words to that, but before you start with that, I would like to put another question to you in addition, and that is your advice to ESA is so far it's about emissions, it's about which special measurements should we take care of, etc. But what about not only observing and arguing about the climate change on Earth or whatever we can see, why not also have some advice concerning the satellites themselves?
Thank you, Jan. 2 points I want to make. I want to certainly speak on that. I think we are taking the perspective of CHEO, the Advisory Committee for Earth Observation, a bit wider. We're not only advising on the next set of missions that get selected and the technical aspect of it, but we actually also had great discussions over the last year about the wider landscape. I think these were issues that you brought up, is what is the role of the private sector versus ESA in this space, and now I'm taking the perspective from a scientist who's interested to understand the Earth observing. And just like we heard from ECNWF, scientists are happy to take in all the data that they can. They're interested to get the data in an effective way, but there's 3 attributes that we're keen on. First is one about quality. So, and that is we need to have it transparently generated so we can assess the quality of the data. Second is the one on trust. We want operators, partners that we can trust in their business. And the third is one on equity. And Jan, the equity element is what I want to make a bit more of a statement to. I think you can, exactly through certification, we know in space, private sector is a trusted partner, have no concerns there. There are certain sectors that the small set community can really bring in new innovation, new insights that maybe is much harder for a big agency to do. So I see plenty of opportunity there. But Jan, I want to speak on the little one, on the last one on equity. One of the elements, when you think about security of Europe, when you think about space, and when you think about new opportunities also for business, has one word. It's called Africa. I think Earth observing for Africa is a tremendous opportunity space. It is the continent that has the least capability of doing it themselves. It's the continent that has a lot of hunger for insights, for support, for innovation. Organizations like ECMWF are a very strong service partner for Africa for the weather forecasting. I want the European Space Agency to be a trusted organization for African scientists to work with them. I want us in the private sector, in the public sector, in the service sector, to really take a hard look, how can we serve Africa best? And I think it has, again, the same elements, Jan. Trust, equity, service, partnership. But here in partnership is we want African scientists and users to be true partners in us. We want to work with them to discuss what is it do they need. For weather, we have the World Meteorological Organization, we have their global contract, Africa is part of it. For private, it's not so clear. For data sets on the wider cast of environment, not so clear. So I think that is a wonderful opportunity also for the ministerial to really speak about how can the European Space Agency, how can Earth observing data really make a difference for the development in Africa? And that is one part of the Fridays for Future debate. It is about the future of the planet, and the future of the planet will also depend upon how we deal with Africa. And I think that is something we've advised Joseph on to take a look at, Jan, and I think there is some really interest, and it's really getting traction that people think, yeah, we can do something there. The private sector is interested in getting in that business. The scientists are interested in really understanding the global environmental problem, including Africa, and we need capacities on the ground to allow for that science. And I think the European Space Agency is in a wonderful position to facilitate that, to really provide an opportunity for our colleagues in Africa.
Okay, thank you. It's obvious that global change and pollution and all of this, climate change is really a global issue. Joseph, in that respect, give us a short information about what you are doing on a global scale, number one. And the other thing is, we heard about data, about trust to data, and there's one point which always strikes me. This is the trust in long-term data preservation. I mean, who can do that in order that we have data also available in, let's say, 21 years? That would be when we have also Living Planet Symposium.
First part is the global dimension. In fact, Martin was perfectly explaining the need of global cooperation, but also using the technologies and information which we are producing, not only in European countries, in our member states, but really globally. But let me also point out the other dimension of the global cooperation, which is that we obviously work extremely well and extremely closely with our partners outside Europe. With NASA, we have Mike Freilich, Sandra Kaufmann in the room, and many other scientists from NASA. We're working extremely well with them on certain components of combining missions, calibrating, validating the various instruments, establishing a global observing system, if I may call it, where Europe delivers one part of it and other partners outside Europe remaining complementary element. I think this global cooperation is by nature necessary in Earth observation, since satellites are going around our planet and certainly depend on monitor the whole planet and also work in synergy. The second part,
data preservation.
Data preservation is a very important aspect. We have heard Jakob earlier to outline the importance of caring for our planet. How can we know how our planet changes if we are not looking backwards and really process these data?
I understood, is it right or wrong that the ozone hole was for several years ignored because it was thought it's just a mistake in the data? The data was corrected, and only after you had a long, is that right? I don't know.
It is right. I mean, we should ask our colleagues who have been much more involved in NASA in this, but it is true. There were measurements taken by sondes, the Dobson sonde, and these measurements were discarded because people thought this cannot be that there's such a big hole, that means such a low concentration of ozone, until really satellites systematically have been measuring it, observing it, and proven that these measurements in fact have been right.
And that means we have also to conserve and store the original data and not only the processed data.
Absolutely. We need to reprocess data, to retransform them to new media, to make sure that they are again calibrated according to new algorithms and methodologies. So it's an immense piece of work which is absolutely necessary.
And who should be responsible for preserving the data for a long time?
This is a question of mankind in general. Let's say in Europe it should be the European Space Agency together with
public bodies.
Public bodies. I do not believe that a private entity like ISI would be interested in reprocessing ERS-1 data from 1991. But if you do so, please let me know. But this is a job of public entities.
Okay, so I have a long list which all of you discussed, but finally, and I can tell you, data dissemination, public awareness, future missions, public-private interaction, data policy, legal aspects, ecology, trust, Africa, responsibility on a global scale. But as you are the Director for Earth Observation in ESA, I ask the very last question to you. Let's look a little bit into the future. Here, I got the message I should ask 20 years in future, but I ask 21 years in future, because then we have another Living Planet Symposium, 2040, and this is, by the way, also your number for your vision. Who will be sitting over here? I mean, I don't mean personally, I mean from institutions. Will it be the same?
I hope you will be sitting here.
I will be over there with my wheelchair. I will come in.
No, who should be sitting here is a good point. I certainly hope, there will be space agencies, but I think the space agencies may be a smaller portion of the overall round of people. I do hope citizens like Jakob but more general citizens are sitting here expressing their concerns and expressing their wishes to us. Private companies, I certainly believe that private industry, ISI, in 20 years will be a very rich company with many offices in different parts of the world, and will tell us how to use constellations of radar. But it really, I think the focus is much more, and I'd like to recall what said before, Earth observation is becoming more of a service, and you may think of it more as streaming information rather than buying data. And this streaming industry and streaming community, I think, will be sitting here, having scientific, commercial, and public partners in the group.
Thank you very much to all of you. It was easy for me. Thank you for you for listening. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to Jan Werner for such a very interesting conversation. Thank you to our panel as well. We have Florence Rabier here, Raphael Modreski, Martin Wisberg, Josef Aschbacher, and Pacum Revillon as well. Now, I don't know about you, but I've got several questions that I would love to have answered after that panel discussion. Hopefully, you'll have a chance to talk to your peers this coming week with your questions. May this be the start of a new wave of innovation. May your minds be full of sustainable, resourceful, and renewable ways to monitor and protect our planet. Ladies and gentlemen, please do stay in your seats for just a few minutes more as we need to ask for the speakers and the press to leave promptly because they have to get to a press conference. My name's Louise Houghton. It's been an absolute honor to host this morning's event here at the Living Planet Symposium for 2019. Thank you all for being here. Please keep spreading the word and have an enjoyable day. Thank you.